it's not up to you. The only thing that you're in control of, which is what is up to me, is my main focus, which is how do I continue to make sure that I'm the hardest working person in any room.
Hey, what's up? Gray here, and this is another episode of the Gray Av podcast. I hope everyone out there, you're having a killer week or weekend, depending on when you're listening to this. In the world where self-education and continuous learning is mandatory for you to succeed, I find it very helpful to just learn from other people that are out there in the world doing it, whether they've been doing it or they are actually in the grind pursuing whatever dream that they're having. So that is what this podcast is all about. The Gray Av podcast is all about curiosity and learning from people that have skin in the game. So before we get started on today's podcast, I just want to get this across real quickly. I have managed to get a Patreon page set up. You can find me at patreon.com/GrayJabesi. That's GreyJabesi. Patreon is the best way for artists and creators to get sustainable income. So what that means is that it allows the community of the Gray Av podcast, or people that listen to this podcast, to be able to support it if they think that the podcast is helpful to them. And that helps me to continue creating the content without having to get sponsors, which would end up ruining the content. Because if I'm putting ads on the podcast or having to follow a certain narrative that's appealing to my sponsors, that kind of spoil things. A good example of that is television. You know, you probably don't watch television because you don't like ads, right? So that is exactly the point. So if you want to support the Gray Av podcast, you can support it with any amount that you want. You can go there, patreon.com/GrayJabesi. All right, let's talk about today's show. And today we have an exciting guest, and this is one of those podcasts that I enjoyed recording myself. We have a very special guy by the name of Maponyane, and this name doesn't sound very new to some of you, which is exciting. So I know that now you're excited as well. So Maponyane is one of South Africa's favorite personalities. He is considered as one of South Africa's most stylish and sexiest men, and is a greatly admired media personality, multi-talented as a TV presenter, model, actor, style icon, designer, businessman, and philanthropist. He makes waves both locally and internationally. Maps is loved and followed by his fans on social media platforms because of his down-to-earth, professional, yet warm personality. He is known for his talent, fashion sense, charm, innovation, versatility, and good looks. So Maps is a hell of a guy, which you'll definitely be able to tell throughout the podcast. And just a couple of things worth mentioning here is that he's actually the son of Maponyane, who is a retired South African football player. He's also an all-time goal scorer for Kaizer Chiefs Football Club in South Africa. And as we speak, Maps is a brand ambassador for Samsung as well as Investec Bank. And before that, he has been on a lot of lists, and I'm just going to mention a few here. He's been on GQ's Best Dressed Men in 2011, and he was the youngest nominee there. He's been on GQ's Cool 35 Guys Under 35 in 2013, Vuzu's 10 over 10 #1 Most Stylish Man in 2013, Cosmo SA Sexiest Man 2013, and South Africa's Style Award Most Stylish Model or Media Personality in 2013 as well. And he has been on GQ magazine cover in 2015. And on top of that, he does work on a lot of philanthropy projects. So on that, I recommend you guys just go on his website, maponyane.com. You'll be able to find a lot more about Maps. So I've always respected Maps, especially because of how he has managed to build his brand. You know, the way he built his brand is such amazing, and to manage to get himself on top of, to become South Africa's top male model, right? But then after sitting down and chatting with him, it came to me that, you know, it's not even by accident at all. Listening to his story on how he got started and the moves he has managed to take and how he navigates into the space of what he does, And looking at the amount of things that he gets involved with, it's such an amazing way of hustling, or putting out the work. So one of the things that I learned from him was focus. That's one thing that I think he's really, really good at, as well as filtering the nonsense out, right? So there's a little bit of that, but in general, I just hope that what you guys can pick up from this is about principles. The principles that you can pick up from this applies in every way of life, or every industry, or every career that you have. So I hope you guys pick up something from this. I'll see you at the end of the podcast. Otherwise, remember to subscribe to the Grey F Podcast on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Spotify. Make sure it's all subscribed, and feel free to support it on patreon.com/Grey Jabesi. Now I present you to my conversation with Maps Maponyane.
So tell me about the name Grey.
My dad's friend in school was Grey, and after they finished, they split up and they never got to see each other again. So when I was born, my dad just named me after him.
It's a dope name. It's a strong name, actually.
It is. It gets me a lot of favors.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I realize how much a name matters after, it's like very short names are quite very impactful and strong. So having a name like this taught me about that. Much like yours, Maps.
Yeah, I mean, that needed to be that, because my actual real name is like hard to pronounce, and I mean, not necessarily hard to pronounce, but for most, for a lot of people it's hard to pronounce, and then it's like there's too many syllables. So you just want something that's one syllable to the point and is impactful.
Right. So my thought was
Grey is very strong. So
I think
Maps is a lot softer.
Yeah, Maps is good.
That's
So I thought that your name was because your dad is Marx, and then it was like Marx Maps.
Yeah, no. A lot of people think that.
Right.
But it actually is just short for my surname. So I got that name in high school when guys shortened my surname, which is Maponyane. Funny story. Kids in primary school couldn't pronounce my surname, which they used to pronounce Maponyane.
You went to a white school?
Yeah. I mean, I went to both a public and a private school. I remember I was like one of 2 or 3 black kids in my grade, because when I went to that school it was 1995. So a year after, what's essentially what people mark as 94 being our first year of democracy with the elections and everything. And it was an interesting landscape and a great time to finally freely integrate and have more opportunities. So it was the mission to be able to send us to good schools.
Right. So that's a very interesting part of the story, actually. So did you ever feel that part in terms of, did you remember anything changing around that time, or you were too young to even recognize anything?
I think I went with the change. So I was too young to see a distinct before and after.
Right.
But I was old enough to see the gradual change from what was sort of explained to me of what had happened before. So you could also, over the years, you gradually saw more kids of color coming into the school that I was at. I wasn't sort of isolated anymore. Even when you went out to certain areas or places, there were slowly more and more integrations. 95 actually was, of course, such a big year for South Africa. The year we won the Rugby World Cup, a year where you felt a lot more of a unification for that supposed rainbow nation that we have been, trying to seek out for so long, and still working towards it, although with a number of fragmentations in between and along the way. But it was it was just a time when you were, I guess, part of the new that was coming, but I think for me, still too young to have realized, oh wow, finally this has changed, whatever it is. But it was more you still kept getting the little murmurs of racism here and there, but also as a little kid, you're just a little kid. You don't really know what adults are saying and why something is a bad word and this and that. Until, of course, I think you get over that 5, 6, 7 years old when you start to really realize more and more things. With kids, you're not negatively influenced enough when you're that young. Obviously, things are being put in your head at the back of your mind, but of course, depending from the home you come from, with what your parents are like, and how they view society and what their stance is politically. But as kids, like you genuinely just want to be able to play with other friends and hang out with other kids. You're not really thinking about color as obsessively as adults were at that time.
Absolutely.
And of course, to a certain degree, as we are now as adults, it's a society that you are brought up in, and it's your surroundings and the environment that you're in that determines what your view is regarding that. So as kids, you're just like, oh my gosh, another human, and look how cool whatever he has is, or whatever he's like, or look how fast he is, or ooh, is that the sun that's made him like that, or has he been in the snow for too long? Is that why he's so white, or whatever it is? But it's all like,
you even make jokes of
exactly.
things like those.
It's just cool, new, fun things, and the easiest way that we see that we're all different from each other.
Right. So at that time, I suppose you were thinking of being a footballer one day. Have you ever been in that space?
Yeah. Played football from the age of 2. Started club football from the age of 3, and played non-stop till I was 16 years old, and then just sort of got tired of it because of sadly South African society puts a lot of pressure on really good pension for, so to speak, and get on the field, have a good game, score 3 goals, set up 2 chances, come off the field, and people are like, your dad would have scored 5 goals and set up 3 chances, or that volley that you scored there, your dad would have done a bicycle kick. And nothing was ever good enough.
Right.
And then over time, as it got more and more hectic, when ironically my father could not have cared less, he just wanted me to be happy doing whatever I wanted to do.
Right.
My parents never put any pressure in that regard to be a footballer. Everyone was just like, will he or will he not be like his father? And it was just like a constant thing where I couldn't actually be me in any way. And then I just started losing enjoyment for it, I beg your pardon. And that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to start paving my own way and make things happen for myself, and sort of go into this whole industry or whatever I go into anonymously without a surname. So for a very long time I was just Mups, no surname for 6 years. And then as people started digging deep, I was like, oh geez, this guy's related to, and then it was like, cool, now Maps Maponyane can be branded. Once Maps Maponyane had earned in its own right to be branded as something, So as soon as I'd earned that right, then I was like, cool, now this is a secondary factor as opposed to being the primary factor. You don't want to be famous by association. It's never something I was interested in, and I was always taught to work hard, go after the things that I believed in and dreamt of, but also things that I had earned. Like, we were always forced in every single way, my brother and I, to earn every single thing. When it came to allowance, whatever it was, everything was earned. I remember when I wanted to go on a school trip or something, we would have to set up a speech or a PowerPoint presentation or whatever it is to say why we should be allowed to go into this trip, even though it was like a compulsory school trip. It's not compulsory if they're not going to pay, right? Because the school's like, okay, you can't pay, then you can't come. Great. So they have that call, but it was like one of those great subliminal ways of starting to get that in my brother and I, to be able to not necessarily just justify, but to be able to the word eludes me actually, for lack of a better term, to be able to enforce and qualify exactly why you feel a certain way or why you think you deserve certain things, but also it was a subconscious and indirect reminder of needing to be able to work for every single thing that you want.
Right. So what's interesting to me there, it's what you said about having the pressure of if you're coming from a great family, or someone your family is got a name, whether your dad or your mom, the expectations that I think that's one of the things that can either lead you left or right.
Yeah.
Because the pressure is just too much.
No, absolutely.
And you always feel like you're not doing enough, I suppose. Especially if you had to follow the same trajectory that the previous person did.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good call for you to go on a different direction and made it happen.
Yeah, I think I've always decided to take pressure on and create what I think would be best in those circumstances. But yeah, I think you also are the determiner of how much pressure you will take on, or how much pressure you will agree to having. Like, you don't actually have to feel that pressure if you don't want to. You are the one giving other people the power if you constantly decide to live your life based on what other people are constantly thinking and expecting of you.
Right. And after that moment, then what did you think it was going to become? Like, what was your goal or your dream to sort of, this is what I want to do? Did you had it locked down, or were you just like, I'm just going to navigate through life?
After that, I was just going to navigate through life, really. Because that happened while I was in the middle of high school. And then when I finished high school and my parents were like, cool, we sent you to a good school, we're still trying to sort out the debt that you've put us in for going to that school. We hope that what you've learned is going to be enough skill and resources to be able to take you wherever you want. But from us, here on onwards, don't expect another cent. And
at what age was that?
18.
18, okay.
And then they were like, cool, so go out into the world. And I had to make a plan, and this is how I actually ended up in the industry. It was an incidental thing. I needed to make a plan of how I was going to be able to make money and raise money to go to university. And I started, working in retail. I was working at, do you remember Akajo?
Yeah.
I was working at Akajo, and then I was doing a couple other small jobs, and then I was selling things on the side as well to make a little bit of money. But I really liked people, I liked talking, and thought of going into television, but didn't know how to go about it. And then my sports master from school had gotten in touch with me saying, hey, I got a call from this sports show, and they're looking for a young presenter to present the schoolboy rugby show, and they wanted to know if I had any recommendations, and I recommended you. So what do you think? And he didn't know at that time I was pretty desperate.
You're right.
And that I was also hoping to maybe get into something like that. And he told me when the auditions were. I went to the audition and I got the job.
It worked from there.
And that's how I got into television. And then I was always sort of interested in the fashion world. So while I was doing that, I went to SA Fashion Week and managed to, after begging, get a chance to have a sit-down meeting with the director of SA Fashion Week, Lucilla Boyson. And Lucilla Boyson was quite a hard, stern woman who didn't hire men at all.
Okay.
And all I wanted to do was just learn from her, so I just asked if I can be her PA, and I'll do anything that she wants me to do just to learn some more. And then I got into sort of the fashion world of things through that. Over time, when I was just assisting her, and sort of went up in the ranks over a few seasons. And then, because I was trying to still make a little bit more cash, because I was saving money to be able to start going to university the following year and to be able to pay for university, a friend of mine said, you know what, and literally word for word, I know you're trying to make more cash, but you're actually okay to look at, so why don't you try modeling? So I was like, okay. So just not something I ever really wanted to go into. And I thought, okay, cool, if I can make a little bit of money from it, then why not? And I then joined an agency, started going to castings. Obviously, you get rejected casting after casting after casting. But then I finally got sort of one then a few auditions later got another one, and then as things were building up, I really started loving it more and more, and managed to get the ball rolling pretty well, and things just have come together, and I've expanded across different parts of the industry, sort of different disciplines across the field that I work in, and haven't looked back.
So your goal wasn't like, I want to be famous.
No, I've never had the goal of wanting to be famous.
Right.
I've always wanted to be able to do something really dope, and be able to get some sort of recognition for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been a guy who's I was raised as a team player.
Right.
That's the one thing I was always taught to do, and of course that's where, that's what makes the difference as well in football, to be a good footballer. And I think that's one of the subliminal things that I was taught with my dad and everything, the importance of being a team player. And as a result, I learned that the final product, the result, being able to do dope shit, was dependent on everyone doing their job really well.
Awesome. What I admire about you is how you have managed to pull off a type of brand that's, it's like your brand, your personal branding is so huge because you always associate yourself with the large organizations or like big brands. Samsung, right now you're working with Investec, with those ads with that little kid.
Yes, yeah.
That is awesome. So I wonder. So I know a lot of people in this industry because I used to work in casting myself before.
Yeah.
It feels like it's something that to a lot of people they think you have to start from the bottom, obviously, and you work for all these little products or little brands, and then one day you're gonna get a big shot.
Yeah.
I don't know how you've managed to navigate from. It seems like you didn't spend too much time. I mean, keeping in mind that you're relatively younger than most people. So how have you managed to pull off so quickly and being able to put yourself at a position where you're actually one of the top models in SA?
And I carried through all my different facets of work, from the TV presenting to the acting to the emceeing, hosting events, the voiceovers, the writing, bring it through my different businesses, whatever it might be. It's become, the work I get to do with the brands has become a holistic thing of being a part of the 360 inverted commas of sort of brand maps as a whole.
Right.
And I've just tried to, I got to a point where I was like, okay, cool, I'm here now and I'm doing the work that I get to do, and I've somehow managed to gain a little bit of interest / celebritydom / a little bit of fame with it. So, let's just make the most of it.
Yeah.
So now, how do you really make the most of that and make brands want to be a part of that? How do you make brands really jump at the opportunity of wanting to associate themselves with you, and strengthen that as much as possible, that you become a really desirable asset to have a part of any brand? And that's, I think, what I've just tried to work on by being true to myself as much as possible.
Right.
And hone in on that by really making sure that I don't ever veer away from the person that I am, continue to expand and grow, I guess keep reinventing myself in different ways, but always taking it up to the next level.
Right. So what I've took from that is like, you're interested in learning, especially in your early years. If you look at Warren Buffett, he has had an internship before for him to actually get into the investing world.
Yeah.
You look at Puff Daddy, he had to work with for Andre Harrell for free at one point just to get his foot in, but his intention was just to actually learn how things work, much like you went to for your first job.
Yes.
Right. So for a lot of young people right now, who when they think of an internship, they look at an opportunity being like, hey, if I work and get experience, I'm looking at this as a stepping stone just to get another job.
So something else, yeah.
Where is your understanding was you wanted to learn that?
Yeah.
The difference there, like what should someone understand when you're at that age or at that level and you're trying to get to get a kickstart?
For me, I'm obsessed with learning. So you put it
Right.
very well. I'm obsessed with learning, and I'm always on a mission to figure out how I can know just as much or know as much as possible, or a whole lot more than any of my peers at a certain moment in time. I guess a whole lot more able to distinguish myself and my
Right.
and my skill set, so to speak, whether it's my approach or how I do business or whatever it might be. And you know, with me, I've always just needed to. Obviously, you make sure that you know what people are getting up to, and I literally only ever pay attention what anyone else is doing, just so I can cheer them on and congratulate them.
Right.
Otherwise, I really couldn't care. Like, I just always have my blinkers on, and I'm focusing on what I need to get done. I found that a lot of the time it saves me the time from wondering what someone else is doing and having to constantly compare. And when you just focus on what you need to get done and see if you can get yourself to a better level each time, as opposed to comparing yourself to someone, then you are probably a whole lot more productive on the things that you do get done, and how quickly you can grow, and how quickly you can get a lot out of yourself, and push yourself to your potential. And I think when people are constantly looking back and forth as to what's happening in the other lanes on the track, then you slow yourself down.
Right.
And I've always been in this very eager and avid race where I know I'm in control of myself, but the race is with myself. And that's probably one of the best places to be in. As soon as you can make that switch and make that click where you realize that actually you'll get what is due to you, and stop worrying so much about what other people are experiencing in terms of whatever successes they're experiencing or the level that they're at, and you might be not there yet. It's taught me a lot of the time about patience and the hard work that you put in, and the fact that it will all pay off eventually in some way or another. Even if you have to fail at this and this and this, and this is unsuccessful and this is unsuccessful, and close this and start something else completely new in a different industry, all that other work that you put in prior to that for other things, trust me, in one way or another, it will pay off. You would have learned or done something prior to that will make you so much better at whatever you're going into, even if it's completely different, because you have that skill that no one else may have that you're competing with. It's paying off. You know, it wasn't all in vain, it wasn't all for nothing.
Right.
In the end, that experience that you've gained is invaluable. It's priceless.
Right.
And even when I'm investing in different companies or brands or whatever it might be, it's always individuals starting these things. I am 9 times out of 10 more likely to back something if the people have failed numerous times, because then I know that they are closer to what the success is.
So with what's interesting now, I mean, I know a lot of people who are more interested in brand building. They're trying to get themselves out there listening to this. I think what's kind of tricky about our time is that we have so many people doing things, and obviously the successes get more amplified, right? And then you realize that everybody thinks that, hey, people start things and become successful, but the amount of people who fail is a lot larger than those who succeed, but the stories are not told. So for someone who is getting started, especially in this environment, like for younger people, the idea is that, okay, if you want to become an influencer, or you want to become a brand, you work so hard to get numbers, more followers, then everything is going to work itself out. Which doesn't seem to be the truth, because now I've seen a lot of people with so many followers on social media, but with no money to show for it, because maybe no brand will come and work with them because of how their entire brand is set up. So how would you advise someone to position themselves at a position where they're a personal brand which someone would be interested in and come and invest and want to work with them, be an ambassador, and all those things?
So it's such a tricky and misunderstood thing, especially with how saturated it's slowly becoming right now.
Yes.
Very quickly becoming, because people are starting to see it as a quick buck now, as opposed to the people who got there initially were just purveyors of things that they were interested in.
Yeah.
And now it's more just like people replicating the model of what other people are. So
Right.
I'm going to be the next Gray.
Mhm.
You know, I'm going to do just like Gray. But I've always found that if you find your uniqueness in terms of whatever your interest might be, whatever that is, and focus on that and do it completely different to anyone else, that's how you start to gain the traction. How do you remain so true to yourself no matter what that brands want to identify with you? I'll give a small example. Like one of the things I've always pushed for, especially being a geeky kid growing up and everything,
Right.
is that I was going to do everything in my specs, like no matter what. Like that was my brand,
Oh,
that was
okay.
my trademark.
Okay.
You know, how am I going to make this thing cool and work for me?
Right.
I remember in 2013, it was a very weird experience. It was Cosmopolitan's SA Sexiest Man.
Right.
And I'm there in my calendar, in my glasses, everything, and it's just not a thing that was there. Never had someone in their glasses before. It's very like, you know, geeky boy next door and everything, but it was who I was and it was
Right.
who I am.
Yeah.
And I like to keep things, you know, sort of fairly simple. I've got my own taste and way of doing things, and from me not being unwavering to that and adapting, you know, my signature with everything, allows me not to blend into the background and be like everyone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I've also got my, you know, own sort of different unorthodox opinions on things and way of doing things. I like to do things from, you know, think about things from the back as opposed to the front to the back, rather back to front. And, you know, it's those kind of small things that start to make you stand out more. You know, it's like there'd be brands, if they, I remember when I was, you know, building up in the modeling, when I was still doing that, there'd be brands who were like, why don't we get this guy and just put glasses on him so like he can represent like
Right.
that Mups guy or whatever.
Oh.
And then people would be like, why don't we just get Mups, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like
sure.
let's just do that. Like, let's just rather just get the
real.
you know, the real deal. But it was weird how it just ended up being like a brand thing. You slowly started to see it become some sort of a trend.
Yes.
And it was just because I was just committed to not changing that, you know, and to be able to make that kind of cool and to make it work for me. And now I, you know, will always switch up my frame game, so to speak, and people are always like, oh geez, where do you get all these frames, whatever. And like that interest now where it's not just growing up the whole time being called Four Eyes and you know, all these different things where you can actually make it work for you in the end.
Which can bring another business model already right there.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously I plan on starting in a couple of years my own eyewear range,
Right.
all those kinds of things. So I think it's always just about how do you find what is really interesting to you, no matter how boring you may think it can be, and focus on that and really distinguish yourself in that. You know, think of someone like Trevor Stearman. I mean, everyone's a photographer these days, right?
Yeah.
But how is he distinguishing himself from being like one of the other normal photographers? He's a like bloody brilliant photographer that pushes the Afrocentric message with everything he does. It's around being proudly African with all of that.
Yes.
And if you're gonna want someone to, you know, represent that in any way, but it's also like the futuristic Afro wave as well. You're gonna get Trevor to do that, you know, and he can also do like the normal-ish stuff that you want to do, but he also is specifically branded to just doing great groundbreaking work,
Right.
that allows him to push his agenda of putting Africa on the map as much as possible through his visual depictions, and that's what makes him so great.
So if Absa is thinking of Africanacity, who would do this kind of concept, the first person one would think is like, hey, Trevor.
The thing is, even if he's not the first person, but yes, exactly as you're saying, even if he's not the first person, the main thing you want to be able to do is even be a thought in the conversation.
Right.
As soon as you got that sorted, things will come together.
Absolutely, and they'll come to you instead of the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also another thing to get right. You know, one of the things, you know, people have thought, you know, all brands have just like come running to me or whatever it might be. I mean, lucky that for the most part that's what's happened. But a lot of the time, if I've wanted to work with a certain brand, I've been like, I've studied brands, different brands that I want to work with, and I've thought, how can I make this brand better? What are they lacking? what could I possibly contribute to their brand that will improve them or make them realize a gap that they're not seeing, or maybe they're vocalized in a way that they're trying to tap into some sort of market but they're struggling to. How do I fill in that gap? And then I'll actually come up with a plan and then go to those brands and pitch exactly why certain things are lacking, what they should do to change that, come up with a couple ideas, and then have myself involved in all of those ideas and be the person that can execute what the plan might be.
Right.
I've always had this quiet motto in the back of my mind. My parents would always, I'd always hear adults around me say, there's no such thing, they'd always say, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
What about the people that actually know something? It's not fair for those people to not be able to get opportunities because they don't know someone, they don't have connections and whatever it might be. And I'd go to my parents and I'd, sort of keep asking these questions and say, don't worry, you'll understand that that's just, when you're older, that's just how life works. Don't be naive about it. But I was always against that. The fact that what you knew actually didn't matter, supposedly, with societal phrases and societal beliefs. And it's more focused on who you know. But I really decided in my mind to not care about that at all. And my then challenge to myself was how was I going to be able to challenge this if I had such a problem with it? Then those people realize that they actually need to work with you, and you become the person that who you know wants to know.
Right. So you have to make it the opposite.
Exactly.
Almost, yeah.
And then your phone's off the hook.
So one thing about careers in general is that careers starts off and they die off, and one of the things that I've paid attention to is for them to last longer, as whether you're in an entertainment business, whether you're or in the actual traditional business world, is that you also have to keep expanding. What are the things that when one is doing well in their career, whether at a small or large scale, they have to pay attention to be like, hey, your brand still needs to pump, it still needs to keep growing. Like, what are the things that one can do?
You only just do what you can, but the importance is for you to just keep doing what you know and love and staying true to whatever that might be and doing it as much as possible. And also not limiting yourself to, as you've touched on, only one aspect of it. How are you able to, so for me it was always about how do I know the entire value chain of the things that I do so that I'm not always the one asking for the job, but can eventually be the person that's providing the jobs to other people or setting up for me to be able to get the jobs that I want to.
Yeah.
How do I play that game against, the employers for me to also be on that level of being able to employ myself,
leverage,
just be in the same playing field as them. But I think it's also been about setting up different sources of income. I remember seeing people that I admired for years and years in the industry who'd be coming to the same auditions as me, and I was like, I don't want to be that guy. No.
Exactly.
I don't want to be that guy.
I've seen a couple of those before.
Of course. But I mean, it just shows you that it's not, it's never a definite thing that's going to continue coming to you. Like you need to set things up for yourself that you can get as much longevity out of it as possible, and not rest on your laurels where you think, cool, I've made it now, this will be coming in forever. Someone wakes up the next day or things happen and then you don't have a job anymore because you literally have put that power in another person's hands or in another company's hands. And for me, it's always been about having different sources of income. So I've got different interests, different things I love to do, but knowing that whichever part of the value chain may not have a job for me, I can still offer another set of skills. So it's constantly working on that and learning as much as possible so that I make myself more and more both employable, but also less ubiquitous, so to speak. So a lot more of an anomaly in what you have to offer, that there's actually so much added value to you that you will always somehow be able to be working no matter what.
And in your industry, especially where you are the business, I suppose passive income is important and things that you don't have to always get involved. You know, if you're on the road, something in the background should still be, you know, paying the checks somehow.
Yeah, absolutely, but also, you know, there's always someone who's bigger, better, stronger, better looking, whatever it is, who's going to come along. So you can't ever believe that's going to be you the whole time. You can never be arrogant enough to ever think like you'll be there for longer than, you know, however long the universe or God has planned.
Right.
It's not up to you. The only thing that you're in control of, which is what is up to me, is my main focus, which is how do I continue to make sure that I'm the hardest working person in any room.
I like how you talk about the actual work.
And like that's just it. You know, I think for a lot of people, and you speak about it through social media, where I could see you as you're kind of like fishing advice for those people who are trying to get themselves out there and everything. But I think people also, like, because of that, people are afraid of hard work. So a lot of the time there isn't the work that's been put in before going down that road.
Right.
So it's just like, oh, cool, I can make money on social media. How do I do it? A lot of people who manage to make it a thing were doing it somehow before one way. They had planned this, and then now they just had a platform. And they could just capitalize on that platform.
Right.
And they already had their unique thing. You know, it really depends on you at the end of the day to make sure that you are doing what you need to do to constantly be ahead of your tribulations, I guess. You know, be ahead of all those things that may come your way that will throw curves at you. So, you know, I'm very fortunate that I've worked for as long as I have and as hard as I have on different things that, you know, touch wood, I can lose this and lose that and lose this and lose that, but then I've still got this and this. And there's always something that will at least be able to keep coming in for me to either quickly pivot and divert and go into something else, or just one way or another just be able to bring food on the table. And
to actually touch on discipline, this one of the things we talked about at the beginning is like the more you're doing, you know, you have so many things that are coming to you, right? Filtering those distractions and, you know, fitness, which is also important, taking care of yourself. Do you have a roadmap of how you kind of navigate, how do you say no, and how do you handle all those kind of things to be able to make sure that you're always on the right track that you're supposed to be?
Yeah, I'm a huge person that bases a lot of things on feeling and energy and intuition. And I just know, like with everything I do, I know if I have to think too long about something, I probably shouldn't do it. If I'm umming and ahhing, I probably shouldn't do it. If I have to make a whole case as to why it's actually okay if I just do this, then I know I shouldn't do it. But most things I just know, like, this is true to my brand, this is true to my brand, this is true to my brand, where I'm going, this is true to me. As soon as I'm thinking, that's not really what I'm about, but it's okay, they're paying the cash, so why not? I never put the money ahead of what I need to do.
Okay. So you actually say no to some things, even when they pay?
I think I probably say no to 90% of things that come in. I'm in a super blessed position where now I can do that. But my roadmap is that the next thing I do needs to be better than the last. So it's always a constant stepping stone. So it's how I compare. You know, I can't be. I don't know. There was a point when I was on my first GQ magazine, and I was like, cool. This is like, I think like 5 years ago or something. And no, like 4 years ago, and I just been on the cover of GQ, and then there was a brand which just didn't meet where GQ was. And for me, I'm all about consistency, so I'm like, I know they're offering a lot of cash, but then I'm gonna pay the price in the end, because people won't believe in my brand if I'm still working in such a, you know, contradictory brand to where to where GQ is. Right. For you
so
to
that's
really
a lower version of it.
Exactly. And I've always tried to position myself as aspirational as possible, but as true to myself as possible, where throughout my journey you've been able to see me work with the lowest sort of brands, or on the most basic television show, whatever it is, and you've followed, like people have been a part of this journey with me, where they've seen the next thing's been the next thing's gone up to the end. As I've left that behind, people know I've moved on to bigger and better things, and I can't go back there. And if I had to, it would be sacrilege to what I profess, which is consistency and growth and aspiration, which is how I've tried to position myself. And if none of that comes together, or if none of that's believable, then you screw up your brand equity, and brands themselves will never believe in you. So, and I'm always happy to rather throw the dice, and it's been a lot of gambles, throw the dice on like saying no to certain brands as well, because there's a brand I'm after that I know will want to work with me, and I don't want to jeopardize it by being associated with this brand, which is a competitor of theirs. But they'll come.
Those are hard games though, because it's like you never know the actual end game. It's like
but if I'm putting in the work, I kind of like try and make sure I leave you no choice, and it's a no-brainer.
Right. And lastly, you since you do top billing, and I saw your post about the recent renovation. I think you bought the place recently, and I think you renovated it. So I suppose you're interested in homes or interior design or things like that. From the people you have interviewed before, what was the coolest crib you've ever been in terms of the aesthetics and the environment?
You'd be very surprised, actually. I've seen some amazing, like out of this world houses that have inspired me in so many ways. But by far the coolest, if we're going with that word, the coolest / nicest house I've been to in a top billing interview has to be that of Tendai Taurira.
Was that in the forest somewhere, right?
No, it wasn't in the forest. It's so he's in the Dolphin Coast in KZN, and he's got this beautiful sort of triple story layered home that goes down the hill, and it's all built on a cantilever, and it's just amazing. It's got like a great man cave there, and I think it's like a 5-bedroom house, amazing pool with great views of the ocean, and a garden in the middle of his home with like a lapa, and just that area is outdoors. Great finishes, amazing taste. And it helps that he's such a great guy with a beautiful family and incredible wife, and it just always just amazing. It was so inspirational as well to get that level of excellence with such awesome representation as well. To be fair, most of 99% of these homes I go to, which are amazing, are owned by white people. And for Tendai to have just like created this incredible space that he built from scratch, with his money from his rugby career, and you see his passion, and you see how nice he is, and he's developed this like wonderful, cozy, comfortable, like absolute massive but totally practical home, which is a dream home for anyone, I can guarantee, and still be so humble in all that he does, and also show us that we can dream and be able to be given the opportunities and live that life as black people. For me was something that I'll never forget.
I think I watched that episode. I think
it's awesome.
Was he an ex-captain or something? In the rugby?
Yeah, so he's
because I don't watch rugby, so I don't know.
Rugby player for South Africa. Right. Yes, for all those podcasters listening out there. Tendai Taurira plays for the Springboks and the Sharks, and he's
so since you have touched into him having family and stuff, for you, since you're a very technical guy, you're very analytical, I would like to hear what is if you ever see yourself married one day, do you ever think of yourself like that? And what would be the criteria of how you go into choosing, like, your opposite, what's the word again? The opposite sex? Or, I think there's another word that I wanted to use, but it's gone.
My future better half. Or
exactly, all those words,
I honestly cannot wait. Like, I can't wait. It's probably my number one goal. I can't wait to start a family and be the best dad I can possibly be to my kids, and be the best co-parent or partner to my to their future mother. But I can happily wait for marriage. I think it's not something that's on my radar anytime soon. But I'm obsessed with kids, and I can't wait for that, and I'm sure it will come eventually. But yeah, marriage is such an interesting thing for me. I don't know how I feel about it, but I know I don't feel as strongly as most people do about it, which is something they are excited and chasing after. But I'm a bit on more of the negative side as far as institution of marriage goes. It's not necessary.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that.
Opinion,
And so, but what's your test when it comes to chicks?
My test when it comes to women.
Did I use the wrong word? You never know these days.
I don't think you should call them chicks.
Oh, okay.
My test is I'm always looking for compassion, kindness, ambition, outspokenness, and sort of strong belief in the people that they are, but also reasonable enough to be able to listen, and probably last but not least, have a big enough heart to have enough room to both love themselves and me too, I guess. But first and foremost, they need to be super comfortable and confidently love themselves. Then it's something that I'm constantly working on myself. Then you can just come together and know that person, neither of you need each other. It's become a choice thing, and you both want each other. Life is just so much better when you both are experiencing it together, and it's not a dependency thing. It's more just how do we amplify our lives as much as possible together.
But you haven't been in some sort of controversy, because in South Africa that's the thing sometimes, where if you're in the public space, relationships tend to bring a lot of controversy in the public.
Do you know what? It's always interesting. It's just always, as soon as you are a topic of interest for media or people, whatever it might be, there'll always be a million different kinds of stories. I think I'm on like my 4th marriage now. I'm dating like 6 people.
Oh wow!
I've been dating my best friend for a while, and I've also just recently cheated on her. But we're also getting married right now, and because she's engaged, and we have a crazy sort of sex life. But she's also a virgin, and I'm also gay. So those are all the stories that are spun that somehow come together and make sense. But they make absolutely no sense, because when you're that private about what you do, people always want to think of what they can come up with to be able to tap into that and hopefully make you say something about it. But just prefer to just to keep it. When you have such a public life, it's really important that you find something for yourself to be sacred to you, and that you can keep private for yourself to be able to enjoy, because it gets exhausting when you really seem to be sharing everything, or everything in your life is being shared and is focused on. But people will always write and say what they want, and it's something that has not really become an issue with me, because then it's like, cool, you're still interesting enough for people to find you something that they want to talk about.
Exactly. Awesome, man. I think, let me not waste too much of your time.
It's a great way to wrap it up, huh?
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Appreciate it.
And
shout out to Alex Simpson, obviously, one of the best guys out there.
Thank you.
Alex, you're amazing, brother.
Yeah, man, you're a beast, and see you doing great work out there in LA. Thank you very much for linking us together, and thank you very much for listening or watching, guys.
Hello once again, and that was the end of our conversation. And just before you go, just want to communicate a few things with you quickly. If you have enjoyed any of the podcasts or this specific podcast episode, I would appreciate it if you share it with your friends and family through your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., as well as write me a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. That would be fantastic. It helps me flourish and sustain this podcast as well. We also on other platforms like SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and all other major podcast platforms. So whichever way you're listening to it, I would appreciate it if you leave me a review. You can also subscribe to the Grey Podcast through my website, greyjabesi.com, greyjabesi.com. There you also find some of the blogs that I'm writing sometimes, and you get notified as soon as the new episode has been published. Until next time, enjoy and be productive. Thank you.